This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to this week's episode of Killer Innovations, a show about creativity, innovation, and design. We're live here every Sunday. We come out as a podcast on iTunes and all your other podcast sources each and every Tuesday morning. Check out the podcast. This is season 12, so if you're new to the show, you can go back and listen through 11 years of content. Not quite sure everyone wants to dig through it, but yes, we have the original show, which was March of 2005, in the archive over at iTunes. In this show, we talk about innovation, we talk about creativity, we talk about design. In many cases, we actually bring on guests who've kind of gone through that process. They've started with that nucleus of an idea and actually took that step, transitioned it out to creating that innovation, and then actually building a company around that idea. And this week is no different. So this week we have a special guest, Mike Kobnak. Mike actually is based here in Colorado, which if you're a regular listener, you know that I've a couple years ago relocated from Silicon Valley here to lovely Colorado. Mike is also here in Colorado, but he's not here in the studio. He actually lives in another part of the state. But I came across Mike actually through somebody else who gave me a little bit of background about what Mike was doing. And so I reached out and invited him to come on the show and tell his story. So, hey, Mike, thanks a lot for taking the time out of your schedule and for joining us here on Killer Innovations.
Of course. Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
So, Mike, you've got a little bit of an interesting background. A lot of entrepreneurs come from a business background, come from a tech background. I come from a background in the tech industry, so a lot of my network is in tech. But yours is a little bit different. Talk about a little bit of your background. Where did you grow up, and how did you end up in Colorado? Are you a native of Colorado?
I am a native. Yes,
wow,
I'm a very proud native of Colorado.
You're an endangered species. There's not very many native Coloradans.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially these days. Yeah. So I'm a Colorado native. I was born here in Broomfield. I live with my wife and kids about 5 minutes from the house where I originally grew up. So I haven't really spread my wings a whole lot. And Colorado's gorgeous, so I don't really find any need to spread my wings much. So I graduated high school early 2000s, went to EMT school and got a job on an ambulance. I just fell in love with it. I really, really enjoyed the idea of taking care of patients, the excitement. Definitely driving Emergent was one of the perks, and I just fell in love with it from day one.
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife actually taught EMT.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
So she's a nurse, and she actually went through it while she was in college and got her EMT while also going to nursing school. And then she turned around and was an instructor. She also does pediatric advanced life support and cardiac advanced life support instruction or whatever. So it always was funny because particularly the firemen guys who were going for their paramedic license, they would always bug my wife. So I'd come home and there'd be like these 4 burly firemen guys around the dining room table, my wife helping them prep for their tests.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, absolutely. That's funny.
So how long were you driving ambulance then?
And I've been a paramedic for about 11 years on the streets. I ended up with the last 6 years of my career, I was at Denver Health Paramedic Division in lovely Denver, Colorado, where we really were cooking. We were running a lot of calls. It's a very high volume urban setting. So I had a great time doing it. I learned a lot. I got to see a lot and kind of get to see the part of humanity and the side of humanity that not a whole lot of people get to see.
Yeah, it's always interesting. It's the you get to see both the good and the bad, I guess, right? People helping other people, and then you get to see the pain that other people inflict on other people as part of just the health systems from the standpoint of, especially in urban areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I grew up in the south side of Chicago, so.
Oh, you know all about it then.
Yeah, so I lived it as a youth, living in areas that had, crime rates that were a little shocking at times.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your experience as a paramedic and how it led into that problem that you found that was kind of maybe a little bit of that trigger to the idea that you eventually came up with?
Okay. Well, I think I've always been a little bit of a problem solver. And I think I've never been one to settle for kind of the status quo and settle for bad workflow and process and bad products. And fortunately and unfortunately at the same time, EMS is kind of ridden with problems, and we're also the last to get the funding and the last to get the technology. So when I was in early EMT, I found a couple problems and I wanted to act on them, and I never did. And then fast forward a few years down the road, and the solutions that I wanted to come up with are then being presented by some of the larger scale companies. And it was kind of a lesson for me to really identify the fact that there was a problem and that I probably should act on it instead of just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. So if you wanted to flash forward a little bit to where I ended up today with my current company and product and everything, it was probably about 2-3 years ago when I really found that there was a difficult transition getting patients from the field to the hospital. And essentially what happens is patient calls 911, paramedics show up, start treating the patient, transport to the hospital, and everything kind of stops. And that stop goes for a few minutes, and then you get into the hospital and everything has to restart again. So me being the problem solver that I was and not satisfied with that, looked at what would be an easy solution, or at least a solution for this in the first place. And that kind of got me down the path of looking at communication and looking at how to smooth that transition out.
So in this case, when you talk about, okay, you're in the field, you pick up a patient, you do your assessment, I'm assuming you're capturing all the vital signs and all of that. Does that go to the hospital, or does that kind of like just stay with you and arrive when the patient arrives at the hospital?
Typically, it will arrive when the paramedic and the patient show up at the hospital. In some cases, we'll use a cardiac arrest, for example. There's a lot going on. It's a pretty big meat and potatoes type call. And typically, all of the documentation and everything is going to happen after the fact, after the call, after the patient's already been transferred to the emergency room physicians and nurses. And it's just a very, very traditional, outdated way of getting that information to the hospital.
So when you arrive at the hospital, then how long of a delay? Because then you have to kind of tell the hospital everything you did and what was going on as they're trying to do their own assessments. So do you get a lot of duplication of effort then, or is it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If I could tell you how many times I've had a patient snap back at the doctor and say, why do you have to ask me this? These paramedics just asked me all the same questions 20 minutes ago when they first picked me up. So there is a lot of redundancy. There's that lag. It's difficult for a paramedic who has about 12 things going on all at once to stop, hand off patient demographics so that they can get them registered, and then walk them through the call from that point. So it's just not a very efficient, effective way to hand a patient off.
So were there other solutions out there to try to address this problem, or is this just a problem that it just? In my case, I see a lot of problems where people don't even recognize it's a problem. It's just it's the process, and it's always been the process.
Yeah, absolutely. The fire department, EMS, everything in healthcare. There's a lot of tradition. A lot of it is just we've always done it that way. Why do we have to change it now? Type of a thing. But there's a couple other solutions out there, mostly pertaining to EKG transmission. A little bit of image capturing into the charting programs, but there's nothing really that speeds the transition up and smooths it out and gives a clear picture and a full picture of what's going on with the patient in the field. It's all very limited, and I think some of it's probably tradition based. I think some of it's probably we've looked at this problem on the surface, and we just don't know what it's going to take to fix it. And with HIPAA and all the other red tape, it's kind of a large project to take on.
Yeah, and it tends to scare people off, right? When you look at these kinds of large, complex, systemic processes that are well established, people kind of peel the veneer back and go, "Wow, this is hard." Yeah. I'm not going to touch it. That's not going to be a process I'm going to go after. And then,
absolutely.
And I think that's where the entrepreneurship really kicks in, because you can really the value that you create in any idea comes from tackling the hard problem. If it was easy, everybody does it. It's tackling the hard problem. So, Mike, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to pick this up. Mike's going to share actually what did he do with this problem. This annoyance that he lived through on a day-to-day basis with his job. How does he actually then transition that and actually come up with an idea that actually turned into a product and turned into the company that he's with now. So stay right there. We're going to come back from this commercial break. If you want to get connected to Killer Innovations, text the word innovate to 33444. That'll get you signed up for the newsletter. We'll keep you updated on everything going on, all the new shows coming out, all of the blog posts that come out on Thursdays, and you can stay up on the latest and greatest thinking with regards to innovation and creativity. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this short commercial break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to this section of the Killer Innovation Show. We are a show about creativity, innovation, and design. We are here live each and every Sunday. Podcast comes out Tuesday mornings over on iTunes or wherever you grab your podcast shows at. In this segment, we're picking up from the first segment. We were talking with Mike Kobneck. Mike, longtime paramedic, saving lives here in Colorado. But he wasn't satisfied with just doing that. He looked at the processes and how things were done and asked the question, why? Why does it have to be that way? And why can't it be done in a better way? So we're going to pick up. We were just wrapping up in the last segment. Mike was talking about the problem space, which was this challenge of picking up the patient and bringing them into the hospital, and this transfer of information that occurs in the process of the paramedic gathering it and then getting it to the doctor when the patient comes sliding into the emergency room. So, Mike, I want you to pick up. So you had this problem. What did you do about it?
Well, I thought about that age-old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And kind of off the record, paramedic would show up on a car accident, take a couple quick pictures of the vehicles, and you'd take the patient to the hospital and you'd show those to the physicians. Of course, you have to leave out any sort of HIPAA sensitive information with that. But the doctors always found that it was probably fascinating, for one, because they're stuck in a hospital while we're out driving around. But we would take a picture of a car and we could show them the damage and show them the starred windshield or broken dash or broken steering wheel or whatever. And then they would get a lot better understanding of what's going on with the patient, what's on the insides of the patient potentially, and things like that. So focusing on that, I kind of took it and ran with it and looked at, you can take a picture of your grandchild or child and send it to somebody on the other side of the country, and it's instant and it's perfect. It's a great way to go. So started looking at what would it take to build a product that was HIPAA compliant. You could take pictures, you could take video from the field, send it to the hospital, and essentially have the hospital staff view it as easily as possible. So a friend of mine who was also a paramedic and had some programming experience sat down. We hammered out a really ugly prototype, ugly. And we initially thought, we'll take a picture, we'll use an app, we'll send it to a data modem and it'll just kind of go through that way. And then we thought, no, there's got to be a better way to do it. So we put together a pretty rough prototype after about 3 weeks. Took it to some of our hospital contacts and showed it to them, and they were very excited for the possibilities of it. Something like this had never been done before. There's definitely no sort of protocol or supported workflow of taking pictures and sending them to the hospital. So it was new. It was exciting for them. They were very wide open and excited about the possibilities, and that was enough validation and enough for us to put a little bit more effort and more time in looking at what sort of hoops we had to jump through, the HIPAA compliance piece and everything else.
So in this case, you built this prototype, and ugly on prototype is perfectly allowed, right? It's about getting out there
Absolutely,
and being quick. So how many did you take it to multiple hospitals, or was this something you just took to Denver where you worked at the time, or did you?
Well, so we had some contacts in pretty much all of the hospitals throughout the Denver metro area. And initially it was, hey, what would you think if you had the ability to get images from the field, videos from the field? And that question right there was opening a can of worms or Pandora's box to some extent, where people were, just got the wheels turning, and they thought, well, nobody's ever asked me that before, but that sounds like a great idea. And we took it to a couple different hospitals, real low level, had them vet it, and took that information back home and started hammering on the regulatory side of it.
And so from the time that you showed the prototype, so then you started the whole process of actually building it, or was it a revision to the prototype that you were working on at that time?
The prototype was pretty much scrapped.
Okay.
We used a little bit of the UI, although if you look at our product and the UI in its current form, compared it to the second or third iteration after the prototype, and then looked at the prototype itself, the key concepts have always been there and the general layout has been there. It's just much prettier. Buttons are not these ugly square rectangular buttons that look awful. So the design is still there, the concept is still there, but we essentially spent about 2 months looking through the documentation, looking through the regulatory aspects of it, and looking at the encryption and security that we need to have in place, put some good documentation together, and then went to town from there.
So describe what version 1 of this product looked like. Was it just a website? Was it a website plus mobile app? What was the product?
So we've always focused on mobile devices. From day one, we were like, all right, we're not going to create hardware. That's stupid. Everybody has an iPhone or an Android, so let's focus on that. So we initially developed an iPhone app. We were able to load that on our personal devices, just in-house, to do the testing and everything. And the hospital receives all the information on an iPad app that we also developed in-house as well. So we've always steered clear of the web page type access to the information, and have always been kind of a fan of the Apple products and the simplicity that they offer.
So it's a mobile app, and so now you've got version 1. What did you do with it? I'm assuming you went to some kind of a beta trial with it with some hospitals to try it out?
Well, we had about a dozen paramedic friends of ours test it all out, kind of in-house. So we would work out the bugs, work on the kinks and things like that. Version 1 took about, I believe the average then was 22 to 25 seconds to do the encryption, do the sending, and then have the images show up on the iPad at the hospital. That's way too long. Yeah. So we did a little bit of fine tuning with the compression, worked on the encryption, shortened everything up a little bit, and now it takes about 2 to 3 seconds for that information to get encrypted, sent through our back end, and then show up at the hospital.
Wow.
We've really improved on the performance of it, make it look a little bit prettier. And last summer, August, we launched in a hospital here in Colorado. We went live at Good Samaritan Medical Center August 3rd for a public beta. And we've had about just under 450 patients have their information sent through our app to be registered at that hospital.
Wow. We need to take a quick commercial break here. Got to pay a few bills. But when we get back, I want to pick up and talk about where you were in that beta and kind of a little bit of that experience of going from a prototype to getting it out there and going and finding that first hospital that's going to support and do the beta work for you. So with that, we're going to take this quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll pick it up right up here with Mike, continuing the conversation about their product. And so if you want to get connected with Killer Innovations, text the word innovate to 33444 or visit killerinnovations.com/innovate. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the Diz Talk Radio Network, and we'll be right back.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations and to our third segment of the show today, talking with Mike Kopnak. Mike is a longtime paramedic who got annoyed with a process that had been established in the whole process of being a paramedic for many, many years, asked the question why, and didn't get scared off by all the understandings of how hard this was going to be. We were just talking in the last segment, Mike, about your getting that product to kind of that first beta at a hospital here in Colorado. So let's pick it up there. So you were saying that was like 400 patients have gone through using your product specifically to have their images sent to the hospital while they were in transport?
Correct. Yeah. So the main use that we're looking at right now is the registration process. Like I said, I kind of touched upon it earlier. The registration process is typically the bottleneck that causes a delay in patient care and causes that breakdown once the patient arrives. So what we've done is we've partnered up with 3 different fire departments locally around the hospital, and literally all they're doing is taking a picture of a driver's license, of an insurance card, of some sort of demographic information, and sending that to the hospital. And those patients are getting registered just over 15 minutes sooner in the entire process than they would if they waited to get to the hospital, handed off their information the traditional way.
That's great. So what's been the feedback from both of the fire departments and the hospital with using your product?
They love it. They absolutely love it. I think every paramedic, EMT, firefighter, nurse, doc, everybody that has any sort of interaction with the patient, and including the patient, really feels the pain from having that breakdown with transition and care. So right. Staff at the hospital loves it because they can have the patient registered before they get there. It's much easier to do it. It's less stressful. It's more accurate, and it speeds up care. So the hospital staff loves it. The paramedics love it, and the staff, they definitely support having a product like this in place.
So here's the interesting question, right? So now you got this idea. You said you had this partner who's also a paramedic who had a little bit of programming background, worked with you on the beta. What's it like? Because are you still doing paramedic, or is this your full-time gig now?
This is full-time. We've had a little bit of a different path than most other startups. Obviously, I quit my job January 3rd of last year. That was the last day I was on an ambulance, and I was equally as scared and excited that day as I was the first day I got on the ambulance down in the city. And we bootstrapped the company, so we're running on a floss budget, not even a shoestring budget anymore. So there's definitely been a lot of challenges. It's completely different, both the attitude, the way you present yourself, the way you present your company, and everything. Being a CEO of a company versus being the paramedic, showing up at a stabbing or something at 2:00 in the morning. So there's definitely been a learning curve for me.
And so have you raised outside money, or has this all just been self-funded at this point?
We both put in a very, very small amount of cash in the beginning just to pay for a little bit of marketing materials here and there, a little bit of development needs and back-end costs and stuff like that. But we've had no outside investors, we've had no angel money, no VC money, haven't really gone down that route at all. And we're closing in on 3 contracts with some other hospitals now, and we'll have the funds hopefully needed to not have to go down the funding route.
Is that a conscious decision on your part not to bring in outside investors, or is it just you don't think you're ready for it? What's your thinking on that?
Well, that's a good question. It's probably a mix of everything. I don't think we initially wanted to have outside money. I think we wanted to bootstrap and go the organic growth route and just try to get to revenue faster. And for me, it was spending the time and energy on getting revenue, getting customers, getting the data and the impact that the product has versus trying to go shake hands and make nice with investors. At this point, we've had several investors approach us and say, hey, this is an interesting concept. You obviously have some traction. The product has some legs. So if you'd be interested, we can sit down and talk. But I just haven't had that shining moment and that person sit down and I guess impress me to the point where we want to move forward.
Well, I think it's a constant question that a lot of entrepreneurs go through. Do I take outside money? Does that outside money then become a distraction to what it is we're trying to do? Yeah. Am I aligned with my investor? Are their motivations aligned with us, or is it simply a financial return transaction on their part?
Yeah.
All those challenges. And we've seen a lot of great small companies that did a total bootstrap and grew to be quite successful without any outside money. And if you can do that, that's great. Or if you need to take a little bit of money, or you need to take some money, it's not money, it's smart money.
Right, absolutely.
It's money that's aligned. It's money that can, help you move the ball forward. So where's the product at now? You're in the beta. I'm assuming then now you've got another, set of feature sets that are coming out for the product.
The product itself hasn't changed a whole lot since the inception in August. What we've been focusing on lately was looking at it from more of a pilot perspective. So right around November, December, we shifted from a beta once we got good information, got good feedback, haven't had any bugs, any downtime, things like that. And now we've kind of transitioned into a pilot phase, if you will, where we're looking at the data, looking at the impact that this has on the hospitals. That way, when I walk into a CEO or a CFO's office, I can, lay it out for them in black and white with the numbers, explain the ROI very, very accurately to them, and take away some of that hesitation that a lot of the hospitals have with taking risks financially these days.
I've got a little bit of experience working with large hospital systems with technology programs like Mayo and Cleveland Clinic, et cetera. And I can tell you, at least from my perspective, is that over the last handful of years, the look at ROI return on any investment has just become even more intense in the hospital system. So have you run into that with your conversations with the CEOs? Do they get it, or is this a hard sell? Or
I think the problem with the sell is it's a completely new piece of technology, and it's difficult. On one hand, if you find an early adopter and you find a CEO or a CFO that's really forward thinking, it's almost a no-brainer for them. And that was almost the case for us getting into Good Sam for the beta. Of course, cost was one, and we gave them the free beta, so that absolutely helped as well. Yeah. So I think if we can identify those early adopters and we can find those end users in the ER and on the streets from the EMS side, they can typically present a pretty good case moving forward and running it up the chain of command in the hospitals.
So it's almost like you got to find that person who gets it, and then who almost becomes your evangelist inside the respective organizations.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing to see working with one hospital where we have a decent evangelist and a decent champion moving it forward, and then another hospital where you have someone that's at your beck and call, and they're looking to push this through as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and it is interesting just from the standpoint of how decisions are made. It's it's never the same in two organizations. It's completely different, and you got to learn it for each group that you've engaged with. So in this case, we're gonna take another commercial break. We got a few minutes here. I want to wrap it up, but before, Mike, I don't want to let you go. Normally, we have guests on for the first 3 segments. I'm hoping you can stay for the 4th segment, because what I want to do is give you an opportunity to kind of share kind of the lessons learned coming from an area where you solved a problem in your career, from the day job that you were doing, turn that into an idea, turn it into a product, launched a company, get it to being a beta, now off and running. You're at that point, kind of that tipping point into success. So when we come back from this commercial break, Mike, what I'd like you to do is maybe share with our listeners kind of that one thing you wish you knew before you started down this whole path. So when we come back, I'm going to ask you that question. What's the one thing you wish you knew before you started down this whole path of building the product, launching the company, and being out there in the beta. So stay right there. We'll be right back from a commercial break. If you want to connect with Killer Innovations, you want to get our newsletter, text the word innovate to 33444 or visit killerinnovations.com/innovate. We'll be right back after this commercial break with Mike and continuing the conversation and getting his experience as being that paramedic turned entrepreneur. Stay right there.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. In our last segment, we normally talk about the killer question of the week. We're actually going to put that on pause this week. I've asked Mike Kodnick, our guest on today's show, to stay on for the fourth segment and answer a very key question. And that question is, Mike, given that you started off as a paramedic, you got annoyed by this challenge or problem that was just kind of baked into the process of being a paramedic. You asked yourself why. You went off and you actually developed something. You created a beta. You've turned it into a company. You've turned it into a product. But as you look back, hindsight's 2020. What is that one thing you wish you knew before you started down this whole path?
That's a really good question. Let's see. I would probably say buckle up and get ready to persevere through some misery. I think I've probably lost more sleep than I've gained over the last year and some change. I know that's never fun for anybody, but just keep putting one foot in front of the other and knowing that it's going to be difficult, knowing that there's going to be challenges. I think the biggest piece for me is knowing that there is a solution for all of these problems, just like there was a solution for that rough transition for the patient coming from the field into the hospital. There's a solution for everything. You just might have to sit down, buckle up, and deal with it for a little bit, and you'll get through it.
So let me ask a question. You're married. So how important do you put on that scale spouse support for the idea and for the effort that you're going after?
110%. 110%. My wife and I had a pretty long conversation, many conversations, many talks over spreadsheets with budgets and things like that for quite a while, up until when I turned my 2 weeks in and got off the ambulance and really was able to commit. And I know for a fact that if it wasn't for my wife supporting us both financially and emotionally and mentally with this, there's no way that it would have come to fruition this far. I think the emotional and mental support from my wife is much more important than just a financial piece and paying the bills and making sure that there's food on the table as well.
Yeah, I think we forget about the spouse side of the equation when you're trying to transition that idea. And in my case, I did 13 startups before I got one that actually we took it to IPO and did quite successful with it. And my wife was a nurse. So it was very easy for her to find work, carry medical insurance, when my kids were little. I'm now a grandfather. Now we're in a little bit of a different situation. She doesn't work, and I'm the one, bringing home the bacon.
Yeah, the tables will turn.
But I can tell you, through all those startups, my early years in Silicon Valley in the early 80s and that, I think the spouse support piece sometimes gets shortchanged, and we sometimes get so wrapped up in the startup that we forget about the value of having that support network behind us through that whole process and through that whole effort. So in the case of the product, was there a surprise in that process of creating the product that was kind of an aha moment, something that you thought you had figured out, but when you actually put it in front of somebody, they came up with something that was just like, oh my gosh, we never would have thought of that?
I think it was maybe not so much the product itself or a feature in the product, but I think it was a use case for it. I was initially thinking, let's send EKGs, let's send injuries, stuff like that. And for quite a while, I completely blew past the registration and the billing component of it that impacts the hospital. And I sat down with a friend, and I was struggling because we had a couple generally close competitors, and I was like, I just don't feel right now. Something is bothering me. And he said, try to differentiate. If you can differentiate your product and you can find whether it's a niche or a use or something to set yourself apart from all of the other noise that's going on, that would be the most beneficial thing that you could do. And since that happened, and I've gone down the registration and billing wormhole, it's an onion. I'm just peeling back layer after layer and finding additional uses and additional ways to impact the hospital, the EMS agency, and the patient financially as well.
So this is the situation, right, where you found something that you could differentiate on, but also correct me if I'm wrong, but I would guess dealing with that billing, capturing that information, making it easier to get the patient registered, getting the insurance information. You've also attached yourself to direct financial impact of the hospital versus other things, which, speed up care, but when you can tie it to that financial impact, it's probably a little bit easier to get that ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the challenging piece for me coming from the field and being a provider of care versus the financial person, the budgetary person, was me shifting my frame of mind from the clinical piece to the clinical and the financial piece of this.
Yeah, it's an interesting solution because, again, most people want to get into kind of the whole issue of quick, sexy, whatever. So, Mike, real quick, if listeners want to track what you're doing, find out more about you and your company, where's the best place they can find you?
We have all the social media, the usual social media outlets. We have Twitter. It's at Novum Concepts. We're on Facebook, Novum Concepts, and they can always go to novumconcepts.com. That's NOVUM Concepts.
Great. And we'll put all those links into the show notes so you can check that out over at Killer Innovations. Mike, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you, Phil.
Next week, we'll be right back here live each and every Sunday across 30 stations across the United States, and then the podcast each and every Tuesday morning. Podcast is the same as the radio show. Difference being is there's no commercials in the podcast. If you've got a guest that you think would be great on the show, drop me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com. So therefore, then we are always looking for great guests, great stories. So if you've got somebody, drop us a note. We would love it. Also, if I could ask a favor, go out to iTunes, give us a rating, giving us a review. We read all of those, and it helps us get the word out about the show. We are in our 12th year, but want to get more people aware of what we're doing and help them take their ideas and turn it into killer innovations. So with that, we'll talk to you next Sunday. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. I'm Phil McKinney, and like I said, keep at it. Don't let the corporate antibodies get you down. Take your idea and get it out there and do it.